As you know, in the past few weeks, we've actually going around the countryside seeking submissions from members of the public on the mini budget. The mini budget is to be delivered on the 24th of March at 7:30 p.m. and the budget then gets debated and voted upon the next day, and God willing, get approved the next day. The mini budget, I think it's important for you to understand the context within which this mini budget is being delivered. Last year when the budget was delivered, we did say that there is a possibility of a mini budget because at that point in time there were a number of variables that were still in play, which of course included the opening up of the borders. Since then the borders have opened. It has meant there's been an impact on revenue, impact on expenditure, and of course some realignment of priorities needs to be carried out in order to not just anticipate what's going to happen in the future, but to be able to take account of what is currently happening on the ground. As far as the municipalities are concerned, of course, all municipal administrators and CEOs need to be in alignment completely with what the policy objectives of the government are. There cannot be a disconnectivity. And I think this is the problem with some of the municipalities, to be frank, where there is a particular level of disconnectivity between what is announced by government, not just in terms of, say, fiscal policy announcement, but in terms of some of the administrative objectives of the budget policy announcements. And one of those key areas, of course, is the fact that the public servants, the public officials, including yourselves, need to be completely politically neutral in the way you administer your municipalities. That's critically important. Unfortunately, some of you have not been politically neutral, and you need to be politically neutral. As I mentioned to the minister earlier on, I think administrators who are not politically neutral cannot remain as administrators. You are given a particular mandate, and that mandate is essentially to ensure that the municipalities you look after are run well, the infrastructure is looked after well, that the ratepayers who are also paying rates to your municipalities, they believe that they're getting their rates worth. In some, of course, municipalities, the rates are not even enough to meet the costs that you have or incur. And therefore, in some instances, government has stepped in and provided that gap or that deficit. And some of you, of course, have to work, smarter and sharper in the way that you administer those finances. The other point, of course, is that in terms of policy announcements is actual service delivery. We have been constantly trying to ensure that within the public service, mainstream public service, that the service delivery improves exponentially, and there is a need for that to happen. Some ministries, some departments are a lot better than others. Some need to catch up. Basic things like addressing your clients, viewing people, your ratepayers, as your customer and your client is a culture I can safely say in most municipalities does not necessarily exist. And I'm talking about your staff, over the counter. When a ratepayer comes to make an inquiry, when the ratepayer wants something done, how does your staff actually talk to them? Do they call them Mr. Tomasi, Mr. Prasad, sir or madam? Or do they say, what do you want? That, unfortunately, the former does not exist. It's probably the latter that does. If you as municipalities from tomorrow, I can tell you, if from tomorrow your staff starts addressing every single ratepayer with a particular level of respect, with a particular understanding that they are your customers, that they are your clients, and without them you actually don't have a job, the entire psychology of how municipalities are run will change significantly. The ability for people to actually respond to queries, pick up the phone call, respond to phone calls, actually does not happen. And that culture within your staff needs to change. And we expect the administrators, through their CEOs, to drive that change. That is critically important. You can go to McDonald's and get served better. Sir, madam, good morning. How many burgers would you like? I'm not asking you to sell burgers. What I'm asking you to do is to have that same level of customer service. And it must come all the way down from the administrator, CEO, and every single person that works in the municipality. Absolutely necessary. So when I talked about the budget and the objectives of the budget, it's not just the fiscal side of things, but also the policy objectives. We ourselves, through government, as announced in Parliament in the last session, we are currently working on a civil service guideline as to how to improve customer service. The fact that we have to actually do that and ask people to say, sir, madam, goes to show that there's a deep culture of non-service. It's a legacy issue, which generally people in authority have seen themselves as, somebody that you should succumb to, as opposed to the person who has the authority should see themselves as a facilitator. That equation needs to change. In respect of the budget itself too, as you know, in the budget we had announced that all market vendors' fees would be paid on their behalf to you, to the municipal councils. So market vendors do not have to pay market vendor fees for the next 1 year, which began in last year, August. One or two groups did get missed out. For example, in Ba, the guys who sell mithai by the, in the trolleys, in the carts, their fees, they're still paying those fees. And there may be other people who are still paying fees. So we would love to very quickly, I assume we may have already heard that, but we'd like to get those submissions really quickly as to what would be the cost implication of that. Levuka, of course, does not have the market. So we did say that once the new market is built, the market vendors won't have to pay fees for the 1 year after it's built. So we'll have to factor that in upon the completion date. So please, the municipalities need to work really quickly in respect of those people who probably needed their fees paid but have not had it paid because we weren't made aware of it. So please, get that known to us. The other point that I also wanted to make, which is again fits in with the overall macroeconomic objective of government, and it obviously should be the objective of any government, and that is to promote economic development and investment. We have seen a number of municipalities lag so far behind in the approval process. Some of the larger municipalities have actually lagged quite significantly behind. So as administrators, you have to make sure and you have a hands-on approach to know exactly how many approvals are being sought. You need to know. You need to have a spreadsheet that needs to be made available to you. You probably can tag that on a weekly basis. Sit down with your CEOs, sit down with the people who are doing, for example, the approvals, and see how or why things are being slowed down or how things are progressing. That's critically important. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, and it's not just only confined to municipalities, a lot of other agencies and government departments, whether it's Lands Department, whether it's TLTB, whether it's other agencies, environment, any other agency, including, for example, Companies Office, Titles Office. A lot of people who work in these agencies actually forget that one decision of theirs, one small decision of theirs, or indecisiveness can cost people jobs, can have an enormous and direct effect on people's livelihoods. By delaying a project unnecessarily, by making unwarranted claims or unwarranted development objectives, you're actually delaying projects. You're delaying investment. If a $40 million project has been held up by a municipal council, by somebody down the line who does not really care about it, or may specifically want somebody to take them out for lunch and then they may feel comfortable about approving it, you're actually affecting the overall economic well-being of the country. And we cannot have that situation where beholden to some people in the administrative line holding those types of projects up. It is critically important. I know one particular municipality where 3 projects have been held up for a long period of time. That cannot continue. Sometimes, of course, these administrative matters or the holding up of it is also beholden to the bylaws or regulations that may exist. And we have asked now on a number of occasions for municipalities to tell us how can these regulations, how can some of these bylaws be amended to bring it into the 21st century? Some of these regulations from the substantive law was in fact drafted when the engineering standards were very different, when the technology available was very different. So we need to bring those regulations up to pace. And it is your responsibility to ensure that you work really quickly with your ministry so we can change these regulations, bring it into the 21st century. Things like setbacks, things like how far you can build from a river, etc. All those types of things need to be worked through. Some of course, have a cross-cutting, or overlap with other regulations and other ministries, but you need to sit down and work together with them. Because your objective should be that if you are going to enhance development in your municipality will do better. Your municipality, a lot more development. You'll be able to spruce up your municipality. So that's critically important for you to do. And I'm sure the Minister would have also spoken about the next subject matter. As you look at all municipalities throughout Fiji, it's an old colonial mindset of design. You have one big bus stand, you have one big market next to it. That's how it's all been set up. So everybody catches the bus, comes to the market, does the marketing and goes back. There has been no devolution of this infrastructure. It's only happened through informal ways. So you get some guy, some lady putting up a stall by the roadside, putting up a 4x2 timber, putting corrugated tin. It makes the place look untidy. Those people, a lot of them line up. There's a need for it. People don't want to travel long distances. There's no sanitation. People go behind the trees to relieve themselves. It's a fact. So what are you doing as a council to respond to that? I know, for example, in Lautoka and various other places where the municipality then sort of built some market around Tawakumbu area. We have people who actually in the Tawakumbu stalls have come to us and say, it's not a good stall at all. And it is actually not a good stall at all. The design is terrible. If you look at the stall, it faces east. And the roof is so high, so they get the sun. So half the vegetables wither. And then when it rains, they cop the rain. These are very basic things. This is where the municipalities, you as administrators, need to be involved in. You need to identify areas where you need to actually set up, roadside markets where there's a need for it. MCTTT does do, market stalls outside the municipality areas, but maybe this is something you can work together with them. So please try and understand, even from a climate change perspective, if people have to travel shorter distances to get to the services they want on a regular basis, that means we are having a low carbon footprint. And you can see, of course, the business community is actually driving that. Not necessarily because they think about climate change, but because there's actually a profit to be made. But you should piggyback on that. You see in Lautoka, you have New World, now in that area behind the barracks. Other places setting up, other businesses setting up businesses in other parts of the larger municipalities. We are, for example, putting up a suburban bus terminal in Valelevu. These are the things that will actually, create in the devolution of how services are given out or performed by individual members of the various entities. So please, you need to think outside the box. You need to think what else you can do to provide better services. One other point that I think which is, really enhances the outlook of municipalities is how well you maintain your roads and your streets from a cleanliness perspective. I mean, you can go to many municipality roads and you can see grass growing on the side between the pavement and the road. It really should not be happening. You know, I'm talking about the curb and the road. So, you know, drains are not being cleaned properly. You know that you don't have to pay for the road maintenance, it's done by FRA. You know you no longer have to look after the street lights, that's done by FRA. So essentially you have a less asset to manage actually. But basic cleanliness, basic sort of, you know, beautification of the municipality creates a lot of sense of good feeling amongst your ratepayers. People need to feel good. People, when they go out into the streets, they like to see clean streets. They like to see some, you know, plants planted. You don't have to have flowers everywhere. You just need to have hardy trees that actually makes it look good in any case. I mean, you look at Singapore. I'm sure a lot of you have traveled to Singapore. Singapore is very beautiful in terms of the maintenance of the trees, but you hardly see any flowers. You can see bougainvilleas generally. They're very hardy trees. But every other place is just nice different shrubbery just planted in a different manner. It's just green. We get a lot of rain, we can do that very easily, but there's been no sense of how do we do that. So you need to actually roll up your sleeves and get into that space. I'm just giving you some, you know, some of the feedback that we've also received from the consultations. You know, sometimes when people take a development plan, a housing plan, even building homes, you have people in municipalities telling them, I'm not saying you do it, but our people who work for you, no, you should not have this bedroom this size. Or you should add another bedroom. That's not their job. You're not there to run their homes. You're just there to ensure that it's in compliance with the laws that exist. It's not your job to tell them how big the house should be, how small the house should be. Unless, of course, it's breaching the law. And again, I come back to the point. Please look at the regulations, because you can modernize it. The other aspect that we're also talking to town and country planning, and again, the municipalities need to be proactive about this. There are certain parts of, you know, some of the suburbs, and I'm talking, I mean, it doesn't necessarily apply to places like Levuka, which is much smaller, for example, but it applies to the Nandis, the Lotokas, and the Suvas, and the Nasinus of Fiji. And we've spoken to FRA also about this. You know, you have one street, it's been generally residential. Now, so somebody's applied to put up a supermarket, so they apply for rezoning. Then they're asked to do a traffic impact assessment. Then somebody, you know, 4 houses down wants to open a retail shop. Then they're asked to do a traffic assessment. Then you have to rezone it. They go through a very long and tedious process of ensuring that they're able to get their business, for example, up and running. Or some lady wants to open up a shop. Now you don't need a business license, but she just wants to open up a retail shop. So the hoops and the loops she has to jump through is too much. So why can't municipalities come and talk to town and country planning and say, look, this area general, half of it is now commercial, and everybody's accepted it. It's not industrial, but commercial. Why don't we get the entire area zoned to be commercial? It saves people the hassle of going every single person making that application. So we said that to MCTTT, who now looks after town and country planning. You should also be doing the same, proactively talking to town and country planning, proactively talking to environment. See how we can be compliant environmentally, but also at the same time ensure that we are efficient in the way that we deliver services. So, ladies and gentlemen, overall, I just wanted to highlight some of the service issues with you. We need to talk to, I mean, I see the CEO of NFA here. They also cannot be a stumbling block. Because we do get complaints, people saying, oh, it's slow. Now we no longer require a business license, but OHS or NFA is slow. Please understand that it is in your business, it is your business to make sure that more people have more development in your respective municipalities. It improves your municipality. Please understand that. They're not doing you a favor. They're not doing you a favor. But it is in your, should be your KPI that you get as much development as possible. Because it improves the quality of your municipality. It makes your municipalities robust and thriving centers of learning, of centers of business, centers of people coming together through your parks, through your services that you offer. And you'll see that a lot of businesses are actually more keen now to invest. They're thinking outside the box. Just bring it very quickly to the macro perspective again. in terms of the economy is expected to grow by about 11.4%, 11.7% this year. The number of tourists we received last year in Fiji overall was 32,000. The number of tourists we received in Fiji before pandemic was 894,000. The number of tourists, 19 was 894, 20 was 147,000, last year was 32,000. We're expecting about 444,000 tourists this year, 447 actually. Now there's going to be a huge jump from 32,000, so growth of about 1,300%. But it is still below the 2010 numbers, which is only 600,000. So you've got a long way to go. But in the meantime, when these 447 come to Fiji, whether it's in Savu, whether some of them may end up in Levuka, wherever they end up in Tavua, Raki, wherever, they must know that they're coming to a country that is not only COVID safe, one of the highest rates of vaccination in the developing world, but they must also know that the service being delivered, the place is clean, the place looks good, and it actually is a preferred destination. That's really important. I mean, in time to come, of course, the cruise liners will start. Those things, of course, are very important to be able to pre-position ourselves. I just saw a few days ago, Bali is now opened up. Phuket is now opened up in Thailand. Every single tourism destination is now trying to get back that market. And some of them are actually throwing in things like 3 nights free, 5 nights free, free meals, just to get a share of the market. So for us, the experience of the tourists is not, it starts off them sitting on Fiji Airways, a clean, new, modern airport at Nandi, a 4-lane road that's taking them out to Denrau. Then they go through Nandi town, or they may go to Lotoka, they may go on a cruise, they may go to Singatoka, or somebody may take them on a drive around the King's Road and the Queen's Road. Every single experience of theirs must also be something worthwhile writing back home about. But in the meantime also, our citizens need also deserve better, because they are just as equally important as the tourists. So please understand that your job is to actually deliver the service, to ensure this development. I would urge all the administrators, please, one of the first things you need to do is get into your offices, talk to your CEOs, and get them to tell you how many developments are actually being held up. What are some of the areas that may be problematic? I'm talking about some of the larger municipalities. Where are some of the problem areas? How you can rectify it? You need to be seen more on the ground. Market vendors should be your friends. Your market masters, some of them are quite tyrannical. I've seen them, the way they talk to the market vendors. The market masters need to see the market vendors not as nuisance, but actually as your customers and your clients. That equation needs to change. And if you change that equation, you'll find there'll be a lot of better interaction. One basic issue also is communication. You always need to be upfront. So many misunderstandings take place because municipalities don't convey the right message at the right time. If you're going to do something, please have some form of communication with them. I don't know how many municipalities actually have the mobile phone numbers of all the market vendors. Every market vendor has a mobile phone. You can do a text message blast to them to say, we'll be doing renovations, we'll close early, or whatever the case may be. It's a very basic thing. Text messaging does not cost that much. Those basic type of things, or your ratepayers in your municipality. How many of you know their phone numbers or have their phone numbers? Or you can say, if you give us your mobile phone numbers, we'll be able to communicate with you, or the email addresses. There are over 600,000 smartphones in Fiji. There are more SIM cards than people in operation. There are over 600,000 real Facebook accounts, not fake accounts. So all of these things you need to be able to ensure that you use those tools that are available at your disposal to communicate with them. Communication is critical. So the economy, we're expecting 447 tourists. From the government's perspective, of course, we have a lot of liquidity in the market. There's over $2 billion of liquidity in the banks. Government made a strategic move because when the virus actually came around, nobody knew how long it was going to last for, whether it will be 3 months, 6 months, 6 years, 5 years, whatever it's going to be. So obviously government had to put in place various strategies, and then to ensure that we anticipate any sort of change in circumstances. Then of course at the same time, when the word vaccine was mentioned, through the diplomatic efforts of our Prime Minister and as Minister of Foreign Affairs, talked to all our bilateral partners. We went and spoke to ADB, World Bank, making sure we get to the front of the queue, because as you know, when there's a global pandemic and there's a vaccine available, all the rich boys and girls will get to the top of the line, front of the line, because they have larger orders to place, they have more money. But we were able to get the vaccines. COVAX, 4,000 doses, Indians gave us 100,000, Australians gave us over 1 million doses, the Kiwis, and of course the Americans. Not a single person in Fiji has paid a single cent for the vaccines, nor have we as a government. And that's because of the decisions and the relationships that we actually have. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a good space. We expect the economy to grow. We need to be sharper in the way that we do business, in every sense of the word, not just as independent operators who are running their businesses, but as municipalities, as government ministries, departments, agencies, and of course, as a country overall. It's a concerted effort, and I think all of us need to be able to work together to ensure that we get that economic growth that we are, that we need to achieve. There are, of course, a number of challenges, and you'll find it yourself in terms of your, resourcing materials. Freight costs have gone up. In some cases, we at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, in some cases gone up by 500%, 1,000%. I was talking to somebody who used to bring a container from New Zealand. Before pandemic, cost $5,000. Now it's costing him $15,000 a container. So you expect the price of things to go up. Supply chain issues have also been affected. The raw materials are less in supply, so obviously there's time to catch up. Things like fuel costs are going up, as you saw. Price of fuel was about US $40 a barrel about 18 months ago. Today it's $140 a barrel. The war in Ukraine will have an impact, for example, on gas and fuel prices also. Things like LPG gas, things like cooking, gas to be used for cooking, will be a huge impact on that. That's something that as a government we need to be able to negotiate, but it'll also have an impact on your balance sheets in terms of your, costs, etc. The last point I wanted to make also, I'm sure the Minister will have spoken to you about this, but I feel compelled to mention this about corruption. Municipalities in the past have known to have delved in corrupt practices. It can still happen. And I see the Deputy Commissioner of FICAC will be talking to you about it. There are, some direct ways of we can have corrupt practices, and there are some more insidious ways of we can have corruption. People being taken out for lunches, Christmas party, maybe a couple of cartons, but now alcohol is really cheap, so maybe they want something else. But those are the kind of things that you need to ensure that does not happen. People cannot get to the top of the queue because somebody has some cute relationship with each other. And there are other forms, of course, because somebody may know you belong to some political party, that they get to the top of the queue, or somebody knows somebody because they went to the same school, or because they're from the same province or same ethnic group or same religious affiliation. None of that should happen. Each and every single applicant and customer and ratepayer must be treated equally. And that's actually adhering to the Constitution itself too. So please be aware of that. And when things, of course, get delayed, some people get desperate. So if you hold up, one of your staff is holding up some development projects, the person's got the bank loan, has got to meet certain timelines. If it does not get approved, then he may lose out a lot of money, so they get desperate and they try to cross the line to do certain things to get it done. Please be acutely aware of that. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end up there now, but as I said, please be aware of the budget that's going to be delivered on the 24th of March. This budget will take us up till the end of July, which is 31st of July. There, of course, has to be another budget that needs to be delivered. And that budget will be delivered either in June or July, again, for the financial year that begins from the 1st of August. In terms of course, accounting, I know the Minister has been working very hard with the municipalities to get all of your annual reports done, your finances all audited and being brought up to speed. Please provide a particular focus on that. I know some municipalities had to deal with legacy issues. Some of it had not been done, prior to even 2007. So please work on that so we can get the accounting side of things done very quickly. And of course, it creates a lot more transparency. At least people won't question you a lot more. I thank you very much for all the administrators who have agreed to become administrators. Those of you who are the new ones, we welcome you to the Administrator Club. And please liaise with each other. There has to be a lot more, dialogue between all of you. And in that way, you'll be able to, learn more from each other, be able to share experiences. And indeed, as we've said previously, even procurement across ministries can give you better returns. So if all of you have decided to get rubbish bins, it's better that all the municipalities get together and actually call for tenders, one tender for that, as opposed to each municipality calling a tender for that. Because of course, Savu capacity is not that great in terms of your demand. So you may only want 400 bins or 300 bins, whereas Suva may require 20,000 bins. But if you put everybody's together, you have a much larger number, so the pricing will actually come down and everybody can benefit from that. So please work smartly in that respect, work across the municipalities, and you can get some rationalization in terms of your cost, and you'll be able to deliver better services. I thank you very much for your services, your willingness to serve, and I wish you all a very good day. Naka, thank you.